Right, guys, welcome back to part 2 of this week's episode of the League Express podcast. My name's Jake Kearnan, and joining me as always is the editor of League Express, Martyn Sadler. And Martyn, we've just had Rodri on, mate. What were your thoughts on that interesting discussion we had with him?
Oh, very. I think Rodri's a good guy. I think he's got a fairly clear vision of where the game's going, which I think is quite important. He obviously defended very strongly the IMG role within rugby league, and I think that's becoming a lot clearer now. So, and he told us a little bit about his own personal history in the game, and I didn't realise that Rodri has such a strong Welsh heritage, nor that he can actually speak Welsh at least a little bit, and his parents are both Welsh speakers. So that was quite interesting, wasn't it? Maybe Wales is the next place we ought to be establishing a Super League club.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's also a part of a crew that's going over to Vegas this weekend. I'm sure we'll have a lot of important conversations over there with some figures from the NRL. But we also found out he's not much of a blackjack or a poker player, so he won't be touching
Well, he claims not to be, but you never know. When you get there, you might be seduced by all that sort of gambling stuff.
Yeah, because I was in Vegas April last year, and free drinks when you're gambling. So
yeah, absolutely.
But I'm not sure. I think you'll be too busy to be touching.
Did you manage to resist any of that?
No, I was getting right amongst it, mate. Yeah. I was right in there, and we didn't really know that it was a thing that happens at all the casinos. So, as you do when you're doing a bit of a boys' trip over there, you put together a bit of a kitty in advance. So, when you have that money saved up in advance, it doesn't feel like you're spending.
I was going to say, how much did you lose though in the end?
I think I ended up about $50 down. So,
oh gosh,
not too bad.
Great value for money.
Could have been worse, but I was still down. But I always say that I made up for it in the free drinks I was receiving.
And what was your game? Was it blackjack or poker or one of the others?
Blackjack, bit of roulette. I didn't mind roulette.
Yeah.
Not much of a poker player. It's too much for my brain to sort of comprehend the different hands. So,
yeah, me too.
But yeah, it was a very enjoyable time. We spent a week over there, so probably a few days
amazed
too
you're
long.
not going this weekend.
No, I wish I was, but putting our money towards other travel around Europe a bit later in the year. So
okay.
One day, maybe next year. Who knows? It's an agreement over a few years. So, yeah, we'll see what happens. But, mate, let's get into the World Club Challenge. Obviously, Wigan, world champions, in a historic performance from them. What was your immediate reaction?
Yeah. Fabulous night. It was a great night. And it's a shame in a way that it's been affected by a bit of controversy afterwards about whether Jake Wardle really scored a try or not when the referee gave it and the video referee didn't overturn it. Debatable. I mean, in the state, I've not seen it replayed much on TV yet, but in the stadium, I just didn't know whether it was a try or not. The big screen in the ground, you needed a magnifying glass to be able to try and work it out. But nonetheless, the try was given, and to be fair to Penrith, and I thought I spoke to Ivan Cleary, their coach, afterwards, and he was remarkably gracious. Didn't try and make a big thing of it. Said he couldn't see whether the try had been scored or not, and similarly with the very last second claim for a try that Taylor May very nearly scored in the corner. They didn't make a big thing of that either. So, they were quite gracious, and not all Australians clubs are not always that gracious, I've got to say. Sorry for you being an Australian yourself, but it was a wonderful night, and I've written in the paper this week that Wigan showed Penrith how to stage a World Club Challenge game, because last year Penrith staged it against St Helens. They only got 13,500 people there. Well, Wigan sold out the DW Stadium several weeks in advance. Could have got a lot more people there if the stadium had been bigger. They put on a great pre-game show and created a vibrant, wonderful atmosphere. The crowd throughout the game obviously were fully behind Wigan and sort of yelled them to victory, so to speak. And it was great to speak to Matty Peet and the players afterwards, and I was delighted with it.
And it is a bit disappointing that such a great game has been sort of tarnished with a little bit of controversy, but I don't think there's any denying that Wigan were the best team on the field on the night in terms of what
creativity.
What they put out versus what Penrith Penrith put up. Like, I think Penrith played a very scrappy sort of game there. They let a few opportunities, go through to the keeper, and it just...
Well, the thing that was interesting for me was that I think probably about 75% of the game was played in the Wigan half, but the Wigan defence very rarely cracked. And you got a situation where at the end of 6 tackles, Wigan, through Harry Smith, were kicking often from inside his own half and was kicking deep. And the Wigan players were not able to put the, Penrith defenders under pressure as they took the ball. Dylan Edwards was sort of catching it without being under pressure. But when they were, completing their sets, they were normally well within the Wigan half, and they were putting the Wigan, wide outside backs under quite a lot of pressure. But they handled it incredibly well, and didn't give way. And the fascinating thing about the game, in terms of the players on the field, was what a magnificent performance Jay Field gave as the last line of Wigan defence. Everybody knows that Jay Field is a brilliant attacking player. He's got speed to burn. You can't allow him to get anywhere in the clear. But what he showed on Saturday was what a brilliant reader he is of an opposition attack. Every time Penrith, were getting the ball wide, mainly to Taylor and May, he was there to tackle him, and of course tackling him into touch with that very last tackle of the game that saved the game for Wigan. Because it was so tense, Jake, at the end, because the referee, Liam Moore, said that he thought it wasn't a try, but he went up to the video referee. And the tension in the stadium when we were waiting to see what that decision would be. Because, of course, as everybody said, and Matty Peet said after the game, if he'd given the try, even though it was on the touchline, he had absolutely no doubt that Nathan Cleary would have kicked the goal to win the game.
Well, I think for his career, he's over around 80-85% success rate.
He's a brilliant kicker, isn't he?
So, no, it's very interesting. The one thing I will say, just looking at that play that Jay Field made, the way he was defensively positioned, there was no way he was going to let Taylor May beat him on the inside.
No.
He really showed him the sideline, said, if you want to try beat me on the outside, I'll give you that every day of the week. But there was no way he was going to let him beat him on the inside. So that just shows that Field trusted his pace to get over and make that tackle, driving him over the sideline.
Well, the thing about that, every other club in Super League will have been watching that, and every other winger will have been watching that and will be thinking to themselves, I'm not going to try and beat Jay Field on the outside because I won't do it. So I think what we'll see now is a lot of opposition wingers, whoever it might be, Ryan Hall from Hull KR or, whoever, trying to step inside Jay Field. We'll see whether that works.
Just submitting to the tackle.
I wouldn't bank on it, though.
Yeah, absolutely.
I wouldn't bank on it.
And Taylor May's no slow player. He's a quick player as well.
Brilliant player. Yeah.
No, it was a really great tackle, and that's the thing. His attack often overshadows his defensive efforts. So, really good to see. Now, obviously, there was a lot made about those 2 try decisions, one going up as a try, one as a no try. The only other sort of controversial, or those 2 other things, I guess, the forward pass for the try. I accept that. I think that's, you see those, that's a 50-50.
And I thought it came out of his hands going backwards. I mean, it's that rule, isn't it? A forward pass is not a pass where the ball goes forward. A forward pass is where the ball comes forward out of the hands. And if you pass it back out of your hands, it might still travel forward relatively, but it's not a forward pass.
That's right. And just the one-on-one strip, I think that was a blatant sort of stuff up that should have been reversed had we had the captain's challenge.
Yeah, maybe. I think that's international rules came into play there. Didn't they? But also, don't forget, the best try of the game, in a way, was that brilliant try by Bevan French when Harry Smith kicked it straight after the scrum, which looked like being the match-winning try. But then it was called back because Bevan French didn't have both feet behind the ball when it was kicked. And that, again, is an international rule, whereas the rule in Super League is that you only need to have 1 foot behind the ball.
Yep.
And the feeling seemed to be that if Super League rules had applied, that try would have been given. I'm not sure if that's true, but that's what people were saying after the game, which tends to illustrate, doesn't it, that we need one set of rules. It's
That's
ridiculous having a different set of international rules, different rules for the NRL, different rules for Super League. How crazy.
That's right. Just something across the board we can all follow and not have to chop and change.
Absolutely.
But hey, when common sense may prevail one day.
You never know. I wouldn't bank on it, though.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, obviously, we could probably put some of Penrith's performance down to that being probably their first match in quite a while. Would you like to see the game rescheduled, or not rescheduled, but future World Club challenges put at a different date that would benefit both?
Well, in my view, the ideal situation would be for the World Club Challenge to be played 2 weeks after both grand finals. Both grand finals played on the same weekend, and the World Club Challenge played 2 weeks later, whatever the venue might be. And I think because then you'd have the same teams playing it, wouldn't you? As it stands at the moment, by the time we get to the beginning of the new season, both teams have lost certain players. Obviously, Stephen Crichton from Penrith is no longer there, and Wigan also have a number of players who are no longer with them after last year. So that's what I prefer. But I mean, it looks as though we're going to keep it as it is, and it looks as though, from what Rodri was saying, we might even be playing the game in Las Vegas from next year. Who knows?
It'd be great to see.
That's certainly a viable proposition, isn't it?
No, most definitely. But yeah, I watched that game from my comfortable couch at home, and you could just hear the atmosphere and the fans cheering, and a lot of the Penrith players made mention of that in their interviews post-match, that they couldn't believe the atmosphere and how much the crowds get into it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the songs
it's totally different to Australia.
Yeah. So yeah, I love the game, and it was one of the most entertaining matches I've seen
for a long time. Yeah.
So,
and you were at Huddersfield on Saturday, weren't you?
Yeah, I went to. Well, actually, I couldn't make it to Huddersfield, so I was at home watching it. But it was a great game as well. Well, actually, I think with that match, and I mentioned it in that article in this week's paper, is the scoreline doesn't reflect how close that game was.
No.
It looked like it was going to go into the break at 6-0 at half time. Saints just leading, but they scored a late try in the 38th minute or so. And there's no denying that Huddersfield are a different team this year.
Yeah.
Defensively, they're very, very tough.
But they've got a long way to go to catch up with Saints and Wigan.
Yeah, that's right.
The only conclusion you can draw, isn't it?
Yeah. So that was I think that one ended up in, what was it, 28-0. So it was a great game to watch, and but there was no denying I was very excited for that World Club Challenge straight afterwards.
Yeah.
But other matches we had, mate. Hull KR 22 defeated Leeds 12. Is it time to be a little bit concerned around how those combinations are forming at Leeds with Brodie Croft?
Not really, no. I mean, the conditions were appalling at Hull KR. It was incredibly wet. The pitch was cutting up really badly.
Yeah.
I think that game illustrated that we shouldn't be kicking off in February, actually, to be honest. If I'm really honest about it, we should be kicking off a bit later. Yeah. But, no, I mean, Leeds have got a completely new spine this year. Lucky Miller at number 1, Brodie Croft at 6, Matt Frawley at 7, Andy Ackers at 9. Completely changed from last year. They're always going to take some time to settle in. Yep. It doesn't work like clockwork when you've got a completely new bunch of players. So Leeds are going to have to wait a while. But we all know Brodie Croft's a terrific player, and the try he created for Ash Handley. Did you see that, where he kicked across the field? Yeah. Very much like Cooper Cronk would have done, when he played for Melbourne. And Handley scored for the second week in a row, scored an absolute blinding try over the length of the field. And, I just thought that's incredible to see, really. So, no, I think Leeds will come good. And Hull KR, they've... they of course have signed Ben Reynolds now from Featherstone to back up their spine positions, which I think is a good move on their part, because Ben is an experienced player who's played in Super League a lot, and comes from Castleford originally, I think, or is it Featherstone? I'm never quite sure which. From that part of Yorkshire anyway. I think he'll strengthen them quite a lot. So we'll see what we'll see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. It'd be interesting to see if he gets to play when they come up against Lee.
Oh,
in the
gosh,
Challenge
yes.
Cup final rematch.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he'll be looking to outplay them. There's no doubt. Well, particularly Matt Moylan, no doubt.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Now, in the other game, we had Warrington 36 defeated Hull FC 10. A lot of controversy in this game, mate.
Poor old Famanu Brown. Yeah, I mean, he didn't even realise he'd been sent off, did he, when he came off the field? And that's just, I mean, it was crazy. It was a pure accidental clash of heads. If Ben Curry's face hadn't sort of, burst open and been so bloodied, I've got no doubt he wouldn't have been sent off. And since then, the RFL match review panel has said it was a mistake, effectively, to send him off. No penalty attaches to Famanu Brown, and yet, of course, his dismissal effectively lost the game for Hull FC, didn't it? Because they were down to 12 men. They'd been playing well up to that point, and after then, I wouldn't say they collapsed, but obviously they were up against it, weren't they? So, I've sometimes said that when a player's sent off like that, there ought to be a provision for a substitute to come onto the field to keep them at 13, even if the sent-off player can't come back on again. And I think that would have been appropriate there. But, that's just how the game goes. But Hull were very unlucky, and they've got a good game this weekend against London on Sunday.
Yeah, they'll be hoping to get their first win because obviously in round 1 and 2, red cards sort of, took away their opportunity of winning those matches.
Absolutely, yeah.
And there's no denying that those cards are dramatically impacting the results of games.
Well, Liam Sutcliffe, by the way, has been suspended for 2 games for making contact with a referee, which I don't know if you've seen that on...
No, I haven't seen that.
No, have a look at it.
Was it bad or...
Well, not really.
Accident?
He was running back into a defensive position, and I think the referee just got in his way, so he sort of just touched him on the back. But unfortunately, the referee fell over. And that always makes it look worse than it is, doesn't it? When somebody falls over, if I pushed you on the shoulder here and you fell on the floor, it would look as though I'd hit you.
Yeah.
Whereas I might not be doing it.
Workplace complaint.
Absolutely.
Going to HR.
Yeah.
No, that's funny. Well, obviously not funny that he's got a 2-week ban. But
unfortunate, really.
Some of these things, like we talk about common sense prevailing.
Yeah.
If you're in the defensive line and you're trying to make a tackle or get back to the line and the referee's in your way, like you can't run through them. You've got to try and get around him.
You've got to be a bit more intelligent than that, haven't you? You've got to make sure you avoid him.
Yeah, that's
right. The point.
Yeah. Other results, we had quite an impressive crowd show up in London for
5,000
the
London too.
game.
Yeah, great.
They went down 34-0 against the Dragons. But, 5,000. You mentioned it in your column this week how impressive that figure was.
Well, where did they all come from is what I'd like to know. How did they get that many there? Nobody's answered that question yet. I mean, we were talking to Rodri earlier on, Rodri Jones, and he was saying that even he doesn't know where those people came from, but they're going to try and find out this afternoon by speaking to the Broncos. So I'd very much like to know myself. I'll give them a call as well, I think, at some stage today. Yeah,
that's right. And another great game by the looks of things. I've only seen the highlights from Theo Farge and Tarek Sims. It seems like their combinations really
looks
well.
like a good signing to me this year for the Catalan Dragons. I think he's going to make a big impression.
Yeah, and I think he scored 2 tries, which is interesting for a
very
back rower.
Good player. Yeah. Very good player.
No, absolutely. And now we had, we touched on it, the Saints-Giants game. We've touched on that. Had Salford 26 defeating Cass 22, and quite a tightly contested battle.
Well, I think Salford are the best team to watch in Super League, personally. I really enjoy watching them. And they had a great game against Castleford. It was a very tight match. Took a very early, strong lead. Castleford fought their way back into it. Salford, moved out again into a bigger lead, but Castleford came back towards the end of the game and could have won it. Only 4 points in it. They had Callum Watkins sin-binned for the last couple of minutes of the game, did Salford, and it gave Castleford a chance, but they couldn't quite take advantage of it. But I think both those teams are good to watch. I think Castleford are going to be better this year than many people think, because I really rate Craig Lingard as a coach. I think he's a real smart guy. I think he's got a good coaching team around him, including Danny Maguire, of course. And I think some of the players that they've signed particularly those from overseas, have come without having big names necessarily, but they're actually performing extremely well. Players like Nixon Putt, for example, who's the other kid? Liam, what's his name? Crikey, I've forgotten his name. The PNG hooker. But they're just looking really effective in my view, and I think they're going to have a heck of a good year.
And Nene McDonald seems like he's had a brilliant return to Super League and form.
Absolutely, I think he's been a great signing so far for Salford. He played brilliantly against Leeds. No doubt much to the Leeds fans' regret. And he carried that on against Castleford as well. I think he's looking great.
No, absolutely. Now, I was going to say, you had some news on your laptop before. Hull FC, I believe, have gotten a few players on loan.
They've signed a couple of players on 2-week loans from Warrington. Yes. Let me just check on that. Unfortunately, my computer has gone on to...
Yeah, lock screen.
Lock screen, indeed. Oh, crikey.
That's all right.
It never works when you want it to, does it?
No. That's the thing when we sort of have these podcasts. Usually we'll come at the other end of the podcast and there's new news that's popped up. It's actually
Matty Russell and Joe Bullock. Joe Bullock, the prop, and Matty Russell, the winger, are both going to Hull for 2 weeks. And Hull have got a crisis, both of an injury crisis and a suspension crisis. So it's not that surprising that they are looking to sign players from other clubs, Jake, and they need to, and they need to win this weekend because they're hosting London Broncos on Sunday, and if they don't win that game, that would be seen as a absolute disaster. I mean, it's bad losing to Hull KR, and I thought they gave a very credible performance at Warrington, but nothing other than victory will be good enough this weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I haven't written down the fixture for this weekend, but do you want to take a look at this weekend's matches? We have the fixture in League Express.
Yeah, we'll just have a look at that.
Open up to the correct page. And don't forget, guys, if you do want to get your subscription to League Express weekly paper, you can head along to www.tolarl.com/shop. Or just head into your local real estate agent. You might be able to find it in there.
Local news agent, not real estate agent.
Oh, what am I on about? News agent. That's the brain going after 2 podcasts. Looking ahead to this week's fixtures, we've got the Saints taking on Leigh Leopards Friday night. What are you expecting from this match?
Well, you would imagine Saints winning that game. Leigh have only played one game. They should have been playing Wigan at the weekend, but it was obviously postponed because of the World Club Challenge. So, but they'll be, they were very disappointed to lose against Huddersfield, so they'll be coming out with all guns blazing. They've had a week's rest. Will that be good for them or not? Who knows? But we'll all be watching Matt Moylan and Lachlan Lamb and seeing whether that combination improves over week one. Hopefully for Leigh it will.
And, you and I were talking before the podcast, the Saints, they're looking really good this year. It could be another 2-horse race between them and Wigan.
Saints and Wigan are way ahead of everybody else.
That's right. In the other 2 matchups on the Friday night, so we've got Warrington taking on Cass. That could be a tight game, that one.
I think that'll be tighter than most people think. I don't think Castleford will win, to be honest. But it depends partly on whether someone like George Williams is back in the Warrington team. I don't know. As we're talking here, I think it's 50-50 whether that will happen. Probably maybe a bit less than 50-50, but it's going to be an interesting game. And, the third game in Sam Burgess's coaching career. So that's, what Warrington fans will all be hoping that's another big win for them.
I've been very impressed with Leon Hayes, the young fellow who's been filling in.
Looks like a potential winner, doesn't he?
And just his defence for a small fella, like you don't notice his size. He's very effective when he's making his tackles.
Absolutely,
I found. So, really impressed by him. Wigan will take on Huddersfield. I'm sure that will be a tough battle. But the way Wigan played on the weekend, it doesn't look like anyone's getting through their defensive line.
Will they have been celebrating this week, though? Will they have been? Will they be diverted?
Some sort of hangover
by that
effect,
win
maybe.
over Penrith? If I were Huddersfield, that's what I would be hoping.
Yeah. And then we have on Saturday Leeds Rhinos taking on Catalans Dragons from 3 p.m. kickoff.
That's a tough game to call. I wouldn't like to predict the winner.
I'm not sure on that one. Yeah, it'll be a tough one. I really like the way Jaden Nikorima's been playing as well. He was effective off the
really
bench.
Really useful, doesn't he? Yeah.
So, expect a tight one there as well.
Absolutely.
And we have Salford taking on Hull KR from 5:30.
What a great game that is in prospect. I mean, Salford... What's amazing about Salford is they keep losing players every year, and everybody says that's a catastrophe. We're predicting that Salford will finish 11th, just ahead of London Broncos, and yet their 2 games so far, they've shown that they're anything other than easy beats. That they lose Brodie Croft and bring in Cade Cust from Wigan. They lose Andy Ackers, and they've got Amir Burrows. Looks really useful to me at hooker. Don't write them off, for goodness sake. They've got a small squad. The big problem for them is if they get a lot of injuries, but so far they haven't. And I think they'll give Hull KR a pretty good game. I think I'd probably favour them slightly to beat Hull KR, but could be tight.
And what do you think? Would you take it or the Saints League game for a potential game of the round?
Oh, I think Salford Hull KR is a potential game of the round.
Yeah,
definitely.
Cool. Yeah, awesome. And then Sunday, Hull FC taking on London Broncos.
Well, you've got to say Hull FC ought to win, and they should win. I think they will. But my goodness, if they don't, that's a problem.
Absolutely. We also have the 1895 quarter-finals, 1895 Cup quarter-finals happening this weekend. Wakefield Trinity taking on the Barrow Raiders, 3 p.m. on Saturday.
Only one result there, really, with no disrespect to Barrow.
Yeah, and then on Sunday we have the Bradford Bulls taking on Swinton Lions, 3 p.m. kickoff. Sheffield Eagles taking on the Batley Bulldogs, 3 p.m. and York Knights versus Oldham at 3 as well. So,
well, I think Bradford, Sheffield and York should win those games. They're all trying to get to Wembley, aren't they? And Wakefield haven't been to Wembley since 1979. So I think Wakefield would take a boatload of fans to Wembley if they get there this year in the 1895 Cup final. So that's something for them to really look forward to. I think they're going to take this very seriously.
No, absolutely, mate. Any other news you want to get into before we wrap things up today?
Well, very sad news that's come through this morning about Darryl van der Velde, the ex-Castleford and Warrington coach who's died very sadly in your native Queensland. He was a executive member of the Queensland Rugby League as well. He's had an incredible rugby league career, actually, Darryl. It obviously started as a player in the old days. I think he played for Queensland in pre-State of Origin days, if I remember rightly. I'd need to check on that though. But he was over here in England for quite a long time, and was always a great guy to speak to, and his love of rugby league really shone through. So I think a lot of people in Warrington and Castleford will be paying their respects to Darryl and passing on their condolences to his family, as I'd obviously like us to do here as well. So, very, very sorry to hear the news, and we hope that they're okay.
Yes, very sad news, that's for sure. But yeah, we send our condolences to Darryl's family, and hopefully they can get through this tough time.
Absolutely.
But yeah, mate. Well, we might wrap things up here. Thanks again for listening, guys. Don't forget, if you're seeing this episode and you haven't seen the one with Rod Reed Jones, part 1, make sure you go back and watch that as well. And if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, Total Rugby League.
Yes, the numbers are rising, aren't they?
Grab yourself a copy of League Express, not from the real estate agency, the news agents.
Absolutely.
Or online at totalrl.com.
We can try going into a real estate agent and see if they know anything about it.
Yeah. No, absolutely. We will show them. This is the cover this week, so go grab a copy. And we'll be back to do it again next week, mate.
Great stuff, mate. Thank you very much.
Thanks, mate.
Thank you.